So we've got the Xbox Series coming out November 10th and the PlayStation 5 coming out sometime around then too. Nintendo has been sitting pretty as the top selling console manufacturer since sometime around 2017, its launch. But for whatever reason, the Nintendo Switch is still in the same console generation as its predecessor. Nintendo doesn't care about labels. They don't care about the current state of the console wars. They carved their own little place for themselves in the market. But there's the rumors of the Switch Pro and Nintendo telling their developers to start thinking about 4K. Accepting the course of the industry? That's not very Nintendo. In order to predict the future, we must first look into the past. We're going to be jumping around a lot here, so just bear with me. We'll get there eventually. In the middle of the current generation, Microsoft and Sony both decided to release iterative versions of their current consoles, capable of up to a 4K resolution at up to 60 frames per second. Consoles seem to always be just a little bit behind TV technology and home movies, but this time around, console manufacturers didn't want to wait for the next generation in order to be on par with that stuff. They took it upon themselves to make a change, a patch, if you will. This wasn't exactly well received. People just wanted the next generation already, but it's what the market demanded, and the market doesn't care about your feelings. In the middle of all this, Nintendo was hurting bad. The Wii U was a massive failure for a multitude of reasons, the largest of which being the hardware sucked and consumers were immensely confused about whether this was a new console or just an add-on to their current Wii. They needed to do something. Nintendo is a very innovative company, always willing to take risks and try wacky new things. They've been leaders in the field in the past with various technologies, but they are by no means tech savvy. Nintendo is first and foremost a toy company. They know how to make things fun. They know how to make the best out of their hardware limitations. Nintendo stopped trying to compete with the likes of Sony and Microsoft after the failure of the GameCube. Instead of trying to have the biggest and best graphics in console gaming, they decided to stick with what they do best. Just create fun experiences that are accessible to a larger audience. And since then, Microsoft and Sony have tried to cut a slice out of Nintendo's market share, but they've since learned to stay in their lane. The Nintendo Switch was Nintendo's plan to double down on the success of their portable gaming hardware. Now, they could have one foot planted firmly in the portable gaming market and one foot planted firmly in the console gaming market, all with just one piece of hardware. And then the Switch Lite comes into play and it ruins this whole analogy. Now, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo all have their little niches carved out of the console market. Sony is for people who want a nice, graphically impressive gaming console with some good narrative exclusives. Xbox is leaning towards service-based gaming with xCloud and Game Pass, and they have something a little cheaper to get the casuals in the door when the next Call of Duty or Madden comes out. Nintendo is for people who want something portable, or for children and families, or for people who just want a fun gaming experience and don't care about graphics or tech specs. Which makes things even more confusing when you consider the rumors of a Switch Pro, or the rumors that Nintendo has been asking its developers to think about 4K. Bloomberg reported that several outside game developers, speaking anonymously, said that Nintendo has asked them to make their games 4K ready, suggesting a resolution upgrade is on its way. And that's literally all the article says about it. Naturally, this raises some questions. I remember Switch Pro rumors first popping up all the way back when the Switch was released. With the technical specs laid out, the Switch seemed like an underpowered console. But it's running on NVIDIA's Tegra system, which has been known to do some pretty impressive things in the past. It also has a USB-C port that it uses for docking. Rumors were flying that the Nintendo Switch would receive an upgrade allowing for an external GPU to be integrated into the dock. There would have to be a lot of finagling going on to get this to even work. Not to mention, this is all just very un-Nintendo. Nintendo doesn't care about the technical specs you want, or else the Nintendo Switch would have more than a 720p plastic-ass screen. Nintendo has been doing iterative consoles longer than anybody. Remember the NES top loader? Remember the new SNES, new 3DS, and 2DS? I do not see a Pro in the Switch's future, but I do see a new Nintendo Switch. Smaller bezel, bigger screen, maybe 1080p this time. Hopefully a smaller dock. There's no reason for it to be as big as it is. This iterative console will probably have a slightly faster processor, just like the new 3DS did. The new 3DS was marketed as playing all of the same games as the original 3DS, but I remember Xenoblade Chronicles in particular being a new 3DS exclusive. And now that I look at it, it looks like there was actually a pretty hefty list of new 3DS exclusives. Hopefully, the new Nintendo Switch doesn't fall into this same sort of trap. This is just one of a few likely scenarios. There have been a lot of advances in AI upscaling technology. Digital Foundry has a good video on NVIDIA's own DLSS technology. This uses artificial intelligence to upscale the image. This reminds me of technology that Marseille has been working on. You might remember them from my video on their M Classic upscaler. And those technologies are amazing and work really well, but there's two problems with this. One, you can't really just slap AI upscaling onto a 1080p console and call it true 4K. And two, if Nintendo is relying on artificial intelligence to upscale the image, then why are they telling developers to get ready for 4K? The AI can just do the upscaling for them. Another scenario that I feel like I have to bring up is a docked-only Switch Pro, something that's a lot more powerful and capable of 4K, but can only be run through a TV. I'll be honest, I think this is a very unlikely scenario because this is the scenario that gets Nintendo to step on the toes of the other two players, and why even bother doing that? They've got their own little nook in that console market, so nice and neat away from everybody. They don't need to step on any toes. But Nintendo already has the hybrid console. They already have the portable-only version, so there's the third little piece of the puzzle missing. The final scenario is that Nintendo just kind of steamrolls ahead on to the next generation. We really hope that this is not the case. Even though the Switch has been around for over 3 years now, I still feel like it's just getting started. There have barely been any first-party Switch games released this year. It's possible Nintendo has a future hardware plan that's pushing things like Metroid Prime 4, Breath of the Wild 2, Bayonetta 3, further and further down the pipeline. So they have nothing to show or announce yet because it would give away their big plans. It'll look obvious that it's on new hardware, or have mechanics that are only possible on new hardware. But we're starting to enter tinfoil hat territory here. We have nothing to base this off of. Even if this new hardware SKU does happen, I put a lot of money down that it's just a new Nintendo Switch with slight hardware upgrades. Nintendo is going to continue to sit comfortably in the little niche they've made for themselves, while Microsoft and Sony battle it out to be your next Call of Duty box. But there's no doubt that with television technology rapidly eclipsing the Big N, and the other console manufacturers pushing the limits of your living room, Nintendo is in a position to either play along or plant their feet further into their current massive market share. So what do you guys think about Nintendo's place in the next generation of hardware, Nintendo versus Microsoft and Sony? I know that it's like, they're not competing, it's not really a war for them, but I mean, they do have a place in the console war. They're all massive companies in their own right, but Nintendo is kind of just sitting there while these two massive companies scrap it out in front of it. Anyway, this is all just my opinion based on what happened in the past and a little bit of the rumors from some of this stuff. What's your opinion? Leave it in the comment below. At me on Twitter. Ain't all this other social media garbage. Check out twitch.tv/WulffDen. I'm live a couple nights a week. Put notifications on so you know when I'm live. I'll be checking out that 3D Mario All-Stars, I think Thursday night. I'm going to play through Sunshine on there, and then I'm going to play through Galaxy. I've never actually played the first Mario Galaxy. Can you believe that? But of course, we got new videos here at least weekly. We're still playing around with the schedule, but you'll get them still weekly. Make sure you subscribe, and you can turn on notifications now because I'm the only guy here. They only getting this one video on this channel. And the most important thing that you can do to help us is just subscribe. And make sure you're subscribed because you might think that you are and you're not. YouTube might just be suggesting these to you, and that's not good enough because what if you can't rely on YouTube for everything? And share this video with a friend who's also interested in the next generation consoles. Maybe they're considering getting a Switch versus those other things. Maybe they're holding out for a Switch Pro. That'd be a really dumb idea. Anyway, thank you guys very much. You have yourself a very good week.